So let's talk Liverpool. We're going to be speaking about how Milos, Kerkez and Frimpong can really transform this Liverpool team and the dynamics that they will bring, because I think the main thing behind both of these moves, and I'm not 100% sold on the Frimpong move yet. I really like Kerkez and I really like Connor Bradley as well. But I do think that the reason that these moves have been made, and I do think Connor Bradley will still play a part, is to add the dynamism that they didn't particularly have last season with an aging Robertson and Trent, who is more of a passer, receiving a bit deeper, not necessarily got the same athleticism and dynamism as these other fullbacks. And I definitely think it's something that's creeping into the game, and we're seeing, especially with you think of the PSG fullbacks, who are so good in all phases, and they add athleticism, dynamism. Those are the key words we keep coming back to, and they really do add that in abundance. If we go over to how Liverpool set up last season, as you can see here, they've got that more flat back four in build-up. So you've got those fullbacks who can receive out in the channels, but they're sort of positioned a little bit narrower and a little bit closer to the centre-backs, so that if they do lose the ball, they're there to protect in transition. Again, this is because they don't necessarily have the same recovery pace that they need. They're not necessarily defend-first players. Robertson is more of one, but Trent definitely isn't. And then you've got that midfield three in the middle of the park there. Again, as you can see, this is another example when they move a bit higher up. You've got the attacking midfielders, the number 8s, who have pushed a bit higher. You've got the wingers higher up and the forwards. But then you've got those two central defenders. You've got the fullbacks a little bit narrowed off, ready to protect those half spaces in transition. And then you've got Gravenberg sort of as that solo pivot. However, at the back end of the season, here you've got Connor Bradley and Robertson. Look at them basically positioned as the highest on the pitch as attacking number 10s, basically about to attack those half spaces in the box. Here, you've got Szoboszlai a bit deeper, you've got Gravenberg, and you've got Curtis Jones with the centre-backs. So you've still got the 5 base, as you can see here, but it's comprised of different players and different profiles. Now, was this experimenting ready for next season? Again, if we move it on one more, this is their last game of the season against Brighton. You've got Szoboszlai dropping in deep. You've got Tsimikas out here on the left, who, again, he's not fully advanced, but you've got Szoboszlai dropping in to make that back three so that Tsimikas can push on. And again, you've got Connor Bradley moving up into that half space there with Salah out wide. And I'm not sure who's through the middle there. But you've got these positions of these fullbacks. I think that might be Jota. Excelling and pushing forward to add that dynamic sort of positioning where they can go and make an underlapping run. They can go on the outside and support the winger. But they're also there for the counter press if it breaks in the middle. They can press really quickly. Their defensive sort of qualities and intensity being another key word, can really help drive this Liverpool team. I think it's something Slot really wants with these two joining next season. You've got Kerkez and Frimpong. If we go through a few of their stats, what they add in abundance to the others is, well, athleticism isn't really something we can talk about with the stats, but I think that's something you can clearly see. They're a bit younger, they're a bit hungrier, they've got more intensity, and they're ready for this challenge of sort of stepping up to that top level to really prove themselves. But the other thing you can see is that their progressive carries, I'll put these up on screen now. Kerkez with 2.86 progressive carries, Frimpong with 4.12. Big drop-offs to Robertson with 2.28 and Trent with 1.71. So what you're getting with this signing is, or these signings, is a big increase in their progressive carry numbers. However, what you're getting a drop in is their progressive passing numbers. So Kerkez 4.29 and Frimpong 2.00. Robertson 6.41 and Trent a whopping 8.50. So again, different types of players. You're opting to bring in these more athletic carriers rather than these sort of sit a little bit deeper, progressive passers and link the play at the back in that first phase of build-up. Again, progressive passes received, that also sort of mirrors this. Kerkez and Frimpong, Kerkez with 5.31, Frimpong with 10.2, compared to Robertson with 3.8 and Trent with 3.36. Again, if we sort of funnel it back to this, when they're a little bit deeper, they're not receiving those progressive passes. Whereas what they've done is they've brought in players who are receiving progressive passes a bit higher up with Kerkez and Frimpong, perhaps ready to sort of implement this style where there is a bit more dynamism and they push those players a bit higher up. If we use Man City as an example, here you've got the two fullbacks. Now, yes, it's still in that sort of 2-3 shape, but as you can see how advanced they are, they're ready to defend the half spaces really high up. This is where the athleticism and intensity comes in with the additions of Kerkez and of Frimpong. Because I think having those extra legs to counter press and really sustain pressure in these areas is something that Slot wants to add to the team. Again, they can then provide those underlapping runs like quite late if they need to, or provide an overlap There's different sort of dynamic routes they can take. Again, the other reason is the tactical versatility. Now, for Manchester City, you've got Nunes here, sort of, you could call this a 3-1, you could call it this sort of 1-3 base, but it's the base of 4. Whereas Aït-Nouri is pushed up into one of the half spaces to create almost, it's basically like a 3-1-6 with Haaland up top and 3 players in the pockets, and Aït-Nouri is one of them. If we head over to the tactics board, what I think we're going to see a little bit more this season, so I'll put Verts in here as well, but where we usually see this sort of shape that we were talking about and these players advancing, I think what Slot wants is a little bit more versatility like we see with the likes of PSG. And I think that they're very well suited to do this because of the energy and the engine room that they have in midfield. All of these midfielders, including Curtis Jones when he comes in, whilst none of them are like out and out defensive midfielders, they've all got the energy and the ability and sort of they can cover ground and they will work their socks off. And I think that works perfectly to allow these players to advance into those higher areas, because it then means that you've got plenty of like really hard working players to counter press when that ball breaks in the middle of the park. But you've also got players who will bust the gut to get back. And it's not just going to be the fullbacks. You've also got these midfielders to cover them. So if they're dropping off into these sort of shapes, so that Frimpong and Kerkez can take up these roles, then all of a sudden, these sorts of players who can create this sort of counter-pressing net, is what I like to call it, if the ball breaks, is really strong and really intense. And I think that's something that Liverpool have always sort of lived by with how they play. And I think adding these two dynamic profiles really does help them to do this. But it's also not sort of reductive, because if you look, I've got Verts on the left. So what you could also have, and what is more likely to happen, is actually Verts coming inside and Kerkez providing width. And what you can see is a real dynamic between these two on the left-hand side really start to form. Same with Frimpong and Salah. You've got Frimpong, who at Bayer Leverkusen love to sort of play in this role. So does it mean that we see Salah move a little bit closer to that inside forward position, Frimpong holding width, and then do we see Verts in a really free role where he sort of roams around in here? And Diaz sort of, again, he's up front at the minute, but it depends who Liverpool sign. If they sign another striker, this could all change. And you've got the likes of Gakpo too. But could they be the ones that drop into these pockets and allow Salah to really exploit those central areas as that rest attacker? And then again, you've got these two providing the width. There's so many different ways that whilst keeping that similar sort of base shape here, and again, this is a 2-3, but in that first phase of build-up, you could see Gravenberch drop in between the centre-backs. You could see Szoboszlai sort of dropping in as the wider centre-back like he did on a few occasions that we just showed. And it would still form different variants of these 3-2-5s. Like 3-2-5s here. So let's just move all this back a little bit. Let's move Verts there. Let's put Salah there. Let's put Frimpong there. And if this was something of the sort of build-up shape with those dynamics out wide, we could even see McAllister dropping in, Gravenberch there. Again, Szoboszlai can sort of push up a bit. This all shuffles over, and you sort of see him dropping in to get on the ball. And it allows them more dynamic movements, more sort of counter-pressing options, more intensity, and just more options in general. And again, I've got Curtis Jones here because I think he's another one that's just worth mentioning, because he's perfect for this role. Imagine he's in there instead of Szoboszlai. Again, a midfielder that will work really hard to get back, can operate in all these different central zones. And I think the collective work rate that this Liverpool side has will make up for the fact that they don't have that out like £100 million central defensive midfielder. Gravenberch was excellent last season, but I think, again, he needs those extra sort of bodies around him to make sure that he's not exposed. And again, it really helps having Van Dijk, having that constant line of communication with Gravenberch in front of him. But what do you guys think about this new idea for Arne Slot's system? Like I said, I think it will be a lot more fluid with the likes of Kerkez and Frimpong and Conor Bradley, another one I think will be involved. Who do you think in this team will be more important in the long run? Do you think Kerkez or Frimpong will become that more important figure in this Liverpool team? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let your questions, put them down in the comments, and I'll try and get to them as quickly as possible. Drop a like if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.